Thank you for tuning in to the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, we're continuing our 2026 NFL Draft prospect coverage with a focus on the tight ends. This is a strong position group this season with a definite day one talent to speak of as well. The Detroit Lions could be looking at this position, but recent free agent activity could table that discussion to 2027. We'll discuss the Lions' options and rank the prospect group next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Jasinski Drew. I'm joined by Coach Andy Scheel. We're partners here. This is our ninth season. We're talking NFL draft prospects. We're focusing on the tight ends today. Coach, welcome. How you doing?
Drew, doing well. Things are clipping right along here. Free agency's in full swing. Lions have been active, despite, I think some people's, in some cases, delusional, mindset of what the Lions had and capability to do actually spend, being kind of out of touch, as well as probably not really understanding how this thing works. The Lions have been active, and one of which, they worked on the defensive backfield a little bit, which was, very much in need to do so. They've addressed the offensive line, which should be, and it sounds and feels like it's the priority in some ways, which it very well much should be. We got some things on defense that we need to look at, and we have the tight end position. The tight end position really, really took a beating last year. It was completely different at the end of the season than it was at the beginning. That had completely different players in it.
Yeah, it's quarter.
So there is going to be some return of injuries, and we have addressed the position via free agency in the signing of Tyler Conklin out of Central Michigan and out of L'Anse Creuse North High School, a good Macomb County 5'8" guy, Tyler Conklin. Shout out to the 5'8". There's some guys coming back with some question marks by them. Our star tight end, we have to be concerned about. He's taken some hard miles in his young career, and he's got a back issue. Yeah. And that's something that we're going to have to monitor very closely at tight end one. Do we work towards tight end one right now with the Detroit Lions? I don't think we do. I think we need to save face that way. We do have Brock Wright returning. How interested are we in Brock Wright having competition for that tight end 2, tight end 3 spot? I'm not so sure. I think if we do something in this position group, just as the state of things on March the 15th, 2026, we're probably looking on day 3, Drew. I think we're looking at day 3 prospects. Of course, they're going to bring some people in via undrafted free agency and that kind of thing. And we could be talking about some of those players today too as well. But it is a position group that is going to yield some players, and we are seeing the tight end trending upward in personnel groups in the NFL. There are more and more teams using multiple tight ends in their formation work and involving tight ends more, and the tight end athlete evolving as well. So we see a little bit of that in this draft, and we're definitely going to have some players to talk about.
Yeah, just looking at the Lions, prior to them signing Conklin, I was definitely on board with them. Day 3, they need to address the position.
If they loved somebody, day 2, because there could be a need down the road for a tight end 1.
Well, and let's talk
tight end 2.
The 3 guys we just talked about in 2027, not one of them are under contract. So there's that. But then again, you could say, okay, we're going to roll with this group this year, and then we're going to rebuild it next year. So there's options they have. But I agree with you. Day 3 was pretty much where I was locked, regardless of the Conklin signing. Now I'm like, well, they don't have to, but they could if they want to. They could go UDFA, but we'll see. But let's talk about our top 20 guys, Coach. Let's run them down before we jump into our top 5.
Well, the top 20 top 20 tight ends on the Sports Peninsula podcast big board, starting with number 20, Lake McCree out of USC. Over to 19, one of those national champion Indiana Hoosiers, Riley Nowakowski. At 18, Miles Kitzelman out of Tennessee. 17, John Michael Gillenberg out of Wyoming. And at 16, Daquan Wright out of Ole Miss. At 15 is Josh Cuevas out of Alabama. At 14 is Dalen Bentley out of Utah. Talked about a lot of Utah Utes, a lot of Utah Utes in this draft. In at 13 is Oscar Delp out of Georgia. And in at 12 is Marlon Klein out of Michigan. And at 11, one of our dark horses, Mr. Tanner Koziol out of Houston. We'll be talking about him more in depth down the road. Over at 10, and another dark horse, Nate Burkircher out of Texas A&M. Going to be talking about him in a little bit more in depth as well. Eli Raridan out of Notre Dame at 9. 8, Sam Roush out of Stanford. A lot of these schools, Notre Dame, Stanford, talking about teams that have programs that have yielded a lot of tight ends over over history, and no different right there. In at number 7 is Joe Royer at Cincinnati. We'll be talking about him. He's a dark horse. And at 6 is a dark horse, Mr. Justin Jolly out of NC State. Our top 5, Jake Endries out of Texas. We'll be talking about him a little bit more in depth. Number 4, Michael Trigg out of Baylor. At 3, Max Clare out of Ohio State. These next 3 prospects we're talking about day 1, day 2 prospects for sure. And at number 2 is Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. He's going to be fun to talk about here. And our number 1 prospect, and he is one heck of an athlete, is Mr. Kenyon Sadiq out of the University of Oregon.
And I'll jump right into that, Coach. Our number 1 prospect, Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon, 6'3", 245-pound junior. He is a 4-star prospect from Idaho Falls, Idaho. He was the undisputed champion of the 2026 Combine. Put on an absolute show. And we've talked about this. You've got your film. Film's critical. Film's 90% of it. But when you can help your stock in your pro day in the Combine, and Kenyon Sadiq did that more than anybody, no question. 4.39 40, a 43.5-inch vertical leap, 11.1 broad jump, and he did 26 reps on the bench, 225 for those keeping score. That is impressive stuff. He was an all Big Ten player last year, Big Ten tight end of the year last year, 80 career reception, including 11 career touchdowns. Last year, 51 receptions for 560 yards and 8 touchdowns. He played in all 42 games with the Ducks, and check this out, an 80.2% career catch-to-target rate. Coach, when the ball gets thrown to Mr. Sadiq's path, he's typically going to catch it and make something happen. There's a lot to like about Kenyon Sadiq. Your thoughts?
Yeah, as a pass catcher, as a pass target, he's clearly the best prospect in the tight end pool this year. There's some really good ones and some guys that were featured in their offenses, throughout their careers and definitely throughout the season this year. But Kenyon Sadiq kind of proved time and time again in clutch situations as well that you can just feed him and he can kind of take you to flipping the field, getting first downs, and then scoring the football. He is an exceptional athlete. He possesses an athletic kind of capability that has some like Jameson Williams, DK Metcalf notes to it. He's 6'3", 245 with very much the skill set of a Calvin Johnson in that he has a great catch radius. He has great body control, explosive strength, and speed. He possesses all of these things, which oftentimes aren't all in tandem together. Now he does so in a little bit smaller frame than what Calvin Johnson worked with. So Calvin Johnson had even that much more of a catch radius. But that's the type of athlete Kenyon Sadiq is. He is, undisputed the best tight end athlete in this draft. He's got that feel to get open. He can kind of just blend zone. He's a zone killer. He can knife your zone and take advantage of mismatches of athletes underneath with box linebackers trying to cover him and that kind of thing, and just leave them in the dust. And then he also has this kind of innate ability to kind of find those soft areas in the passing windows and get open, which all the great tight ends and great receivers, regardless if you're a tight end, receiver, or running back, can do. He gets all that separation. I mean, he's a mismatch. I mean, you are forced to use a defensive back on him if you're going to do man, or if you want to press him. I guess you better get it done, because if he gets a release, you're going to get left in the dust. He thrives in the big situation. Big Ten championship game a couple of years ago, he just took it over. He took it over as a pass catcher, and it may have. I'm just trying to think who the quarterback was of that team. If it was Nix, I'm not quite sure. But he just kept on feeding him. He came in. He was playing because of injury. There was other tight ends ahead of him on the depth chart at that time. This is when he was an underclassman. He just took that game over. He can line up all over the field. Being an inline tight end, we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, is not maybe necessarily his greatest strength right now. Is putting that hand in the ground and getting to a three-point stance next to an offensive tackle and going to work with him. But he is definitely alignment versatile, and you can put him all over your scheme. He's got great hands. He's a skilled pass catcher. He catches with his hands, gets those hands away from the body and pulls things in. He's got just neck. He's got wide receiver body control as a receiver. So this is just a next level, pass receiving threat, Drew, that has the ceiling to be a Pro Bowl, All Pro type tight end.
His pass, you said it. His skill set, his ability to catch, his catch radius, all that to me screams day one, no question. But he's not, to your point, like a prototypical tight end per se yet. What do you think he needs to work on going forward, Coach?
Well, at 6'3", 245, he lacks, I wouldn't call it prototypical size, because you can be a fine tight end at 6'3", 245, 6'3", 250. It's not that he's too slight, but there are tight ends with bigger frames out there. And, our tight end, to name one of them, is a bigger framed guy than that. There are some limitations with that, but he's just got to make the requisite, refinements and developments to his game to be a pro. He's just got to continue to be a more refined and disciplined route runner. Those are things that, are going to be just calling cards for him. He does them pretty well now. He has to become an all pro at them in order for him to reach his potential. Because, he can drift a little bit. You get into a game where they're throwing the football a lot. We talked about him having the capability of being the go-to guy. There are also instances where he just kind of drifts out and doesn't command, the football. And like I said, it's not like you're, James Harden or somebody like this in the NBA that are commanding the ball so you can get your shots up. There's a lot of things going on in your typical NFL pass play. But there are times where he's just kind of not been a factor. You look at his statistics, it's not like he was a catching machine. They're not pedestrian, but they're also not just absolutely prolific either. He's much more of a receiver than he is a blocker at this point in time. And that goes without saying. A lot of these, especially in these college air raid offenses, the precipice is on being a receiver. It's they use a tight end, but and they obviously are involved in the blocking and the run game and for their fellow receivers and stuff in the screen game and those kinds of things. That's why they're out there. But they're primarily in passing offenses that are running routes all the time. Their blocking becomes secondary, and that's something that Kenyon Sadiq's going to have to work on. That part of his game is not there yet. He is not the inline tight end. We're going to be talking about some better inline tight end prospects, guys that can put their hand in the ground and become extra offensive linemen as well as wide receivers. There are prospects, I think, that do a better job of that than Kenyon Sadiq in this draft. That's not one of his strengths. He leaves a lot to be desired as an inline tight end and as a blocker. That's where the frame is going to have to get thickened up a little bit. And overall, he's going to have to commit to becoming a better inline tight end prospect. He's going to get pressed. That's how they're going to try to take him away. They're going to put a hot head over the top of him and try to mangle him. That's why guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, have jobs, every year because they're willing to do that and get up and mess with you that way. And can a guy like that be an issue for Kenyon Sadiq? He's going to have to answer that question. Can he handle 3-4 downs as a tight end? Can he be out there for 4th and 1? Is he going to be a tight end you can comfortably put out there on the goal line in your tush push formation? Can he be somebody that can help you get tough yards too as a blocker? Those are things Kenyon Sadiq's got to have to prove in order for him to really reach his full potential.
He's, I wouldn't say unique to me, but he definitely stands out in this draft because his pass catching ability is elite. It clearly is why he's number one on this list. But to your point, there's other tight ends that do it better when they have their hand in the dirt. There's no doubt. But the skill set that Sadiq has and possesses, there's so many offensive coordinators. They're just smiling like, what could I do with a guy like this? He's a matchup nightmare. You made the point. You put us, Gardner Johnson on him. Yeah, he could mess him, but that's better than having maybe like an Anzalone on him per se, a linebacker who's going to be even more physical. However, Sadiq's ability to separate and his route running ability, that's what makes him so difficult. It's tough to put a linebacker on him. You got to put a DB on him and account for him, but at the same time, you're going to have a hard time with a 6 foot, 200-pound DB trying to check Sadiq at 6'3", 245. I get it. There's other ways to handle it. And like you said, Cole, you can put a nasty D end right over top of him and take him right out of the game. You could absolutely do that, and teams will do that, no question. But, man, a lot to like about Sadiq here as a number one prospect in our book. And I believe clearly a day one guy. So it's going to be fun to see where he ends up and what kind of offense he ends up in going for his career. Let's talk about the number 2 prospect we have, Coach.
Number 2 prospect on the SPP big board is Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt, 6'4", 235-pound redshirt senior, which really means 6 years anymore. He was a 4-star quarterback prospect. And that's right, he was a quarterback. That's what he was recruited as, and that's what he signed with Texas A&M as one of the great dual threat quarterback. And he went to Texas A&M at first. He's transferred from Texas A&M and New Mexico State. So Vanderbilt is his 3rd stop. He played 5 games in 2 years at quarterback for A&M. He did not find the field. You only play one quarterback at a time, Drew, in most offenses that I've ever seen. And, it's tough to get out there. And Eli Stowers was one of these quarterbacks that went big and, had a hard time getting on the field. So didn't play a whole lot for Texas A&M. Transferred to New Mexico State, and Coach Jerry Kill, who's the head coach of and great mentor of one of our dear friends, Matt Kloss at Saginaw Valley State, talked to him and convinced him to try tight end and become a tight end at New Mexico State. And he evolved. And when Coach Kill stepped away from New Mexico State and became an assistant coach for Clark Lee over at Vanderbilt, he brought a lot of those New Mexico State Aggies with him to Nashville. And Eli Stowers was one of them, and that is where he became the 2025 John Mackey Award winner for the nation's top tight end. He was a 2-time All-American and also 2-time All-SEC football player for Vanderbilt. He's got a 45.5-inch vertical leap. This is a very athletic young man. Career 146 receptions, over 1,700 yards and 13 total touchdowns for his career. And he has a little bit lower catch target rate than Sadiq, who's got the crazy catching radius. But 73.3 is still very, very strong and very commanding for a tight end. So Eli Stowers is a very interesting prospect, Drew, and somebody that had the Lions not done much to address this position. And he could be a type of player you bring in because, yes, he is a great pass-catching tight end and somebody that can fit into your repertoire that way. But he also can do some different things in kind of the trick plays and some of the gimmick plays and being able to throw the football and handle the football off the snap and some of those kinds of things too. So Eli Stowers, very interesting prospect.
He is. I mean, he's a guy that I think is a solid day 2 guy, no question. He has the talent to be at least in the conversation on day one, although I don't think that'll happen. But man, he's got a lot going for him, coach. And what we like about him, first of all, he's fluid and really advanced in his route running. For being a converted quarterback, and having gone through a couple different systems, obviously, before, eventually ending up at Vanderbilt there, like you said, following Coach Kill, but really polished, phenomenal catch radius of 45 and a half in vertical length. I mean, that's outstanding. Explosive downfield threat as a tight end. He ran a 4.55 himself. That's outstanding speed for a tight end. That's great speed. Former quarterback, like we said, so like you point out, coach, he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. Like, he's got potential to do things like we saw. We've seen it before. We're seeing more and more of it now coming through, where a lot of players are having that dual threat, dual role capacity. We certainly have seen it in New Orleans quite a bit, right? Certainly the fantasy football team, Taysom Hill, down there for what he was doing. He's the prototype of that. Not saying he's going to be that kind of player, but Stowers has that ability, possesses potential for complete alignment versatility. He can have his hand in the dirt. He can line up outside. Very good. He's very dangerous. Yards after the catch is very much a threat there. He's got great hands, just a natural at catching the ball, and he's good at finding open spots, and he's got explosiveness to get separation. Vanderbilt took a huge jump last year, and Pavia, the quarterback, got a lot of credit for that. But no coincidence, Mr. Stowers was also on the team as well, Coach.
Well, the franchises and teams that really value Eli Stowers are going to do so, obviously, for all those things on the left side of the screen. Because I think those that value him really value him, because they can see him being kind of an instant difference maker in different packages in their offense. He that Swiss Army knife capability is a real ace in his back pocket, Drew. That's something that Eli Stowers doesn't possess completely on his own. There's others that have some of these capabilities as well, but he's very unique in that regard. He is really a very dynamic offensive threat, and that is going to get him definitely drafted no later than Friday evening.
Yeah, and honestly, from a Lions perspective, I
think
loved
him, but it's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah,
there's just the need is just the need is just not there for what the need is in other places.
Exactly. But he's very much in play on day two, and absolutely will be gone on day two. I have no doubt about that. Potentially early in round two. I don't know. We'll see. It depends on where it shakes out. But he's got some things to work on. He is still transitioning from playing quarterback, so there's still work to be done there. Of course, he's got to get more polished, but his pass catching, he's there. It's more in the blocking, etc. He's got a light frame to be a legitimate inline tight end. So to be only 235 pounds, can he get up to 250? It looks like he's got the frame to do that, Coach. I mean, he's got some length to him, so he's got a possibility to be able to do that. That'll help him a lot. So he is a limited blocker and really and a non-quarterback football player. And so he's got to, again, making that transition to the tight end position fully. It's still a work in progress somewhat. So only 13 career starts in 45 career college football games. So again, kind of new to the show a little bit, but after last year, man, the potential's there and you see it. He's had a tendency to get eaten up by physical defensive backs and linebackers. So again, that's where getting a little more meat on the bone might help out a little bit. As long as you can maintain that speed and that twitchiness, he can do it. But he's a major work in progress as a blocker, and he's gonna need to incubate as an inline tight end. So again, it's going to be more situational, but in terms of just flat out ability and ability to play this position and be an effective NFL tight end, Coach, I would take a absolute flyer, take a chance on Eli Stowers in day two if I'm any football team with a need at tight end.
Well, that's what Eli Stowers has been. He's been a situational player his entire college career. So that is essentially what you're getting, and maybe even in full, that's what you'll always get. Is Eli Stowers a true tight end one in the classic sense, or does your tight end 2 become tight end 1 in certain schemes, which can kind of tip? That's what Eli Stowers has got to prove. And it's very much the same way. A lot of he's got to prove the same exact things that Kenyon Sadiq does as well. But Kenyon Sadiq might be a little further along the progression and development line than Eli Stowers is at this time. He's got a ways to go as a blocker and getting that hand in the ground as a true inline tight end, if that's what you use. But again, he's been involved with a couple different offensive schemes that has not demanded that from him as much. And that could be, he could go to a place where it's not demanded of him as much as well. But until he can really develop some of those run blocking skills, I'm not as concerned. I mean, yes, he's a little bit light as a starter as far as that number goes, but he's played in 45 games. So, I mean, he has played a lot of football, but he's very new to not being under center or taking a snap. That he's only been doing this for a few years.
Yeah.
So, that's where Eli Stowers has got some growth to do.
Absolutely, but impressive enough physically and for what the body of work that we've seen that clearly in our mind number two guy on the list.
He's going in the second round.
Absolutely,
he's just too talented not to.
Yeah,
too much opportunity to work with there.
Yeah, exactly. Our number 3 prospect on the board is from The Ohio State University. It's Max Clare, the 6'5", 243-pound junior. He hails from Guilford, Indiana. He transferred from Purdue, so he did stay at home initially. He did transfer out for Purdue. His father, brother, grandfather, 2 uncles, and cousin all played D1 football. I think it's in the genes, Coach. It's quite a lineage there. Yeah. Last year, all Big Ten player at Ohio State. In 2024, he was all Big Ten at Purdue. Very impressive. In 2024, he had 51 catches for 685 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Boilermakers. For his career, he has 116 catches for over 1,300 yards and 6 touchdowns. And his catch radius for his career, 75.3%, Coach. Man, I mean, Ohio State's loaded. They're always loaded every year. Much like we see Michigan, the Georgias, teams like that. They're loaded. There's always huge prospects. Max Clare is a hell of a tight end prospect out of the Big Ten, Ohio State.
Yeah, he's a volume pass target at the tight end position for sure. You can do that at a place like Ohio State. If you can do that at the Division I level, where you can be the in-demand pass catcher or pass target from your quarterback at the tight end position, you're clearly a very skilled pass catcher and a very skilled receiver. And Max Clare brings a little more to the table than maybe Sadiq and Stowers does, with his natural frame to be an inline tight end. We're talking about a 6'5", 243-pound prospect, a little more frame to work with there. But he still does possess some of those same skills that those two do as well. He has the ability to become a vertical pass threat. He can get down the field and make plays down the field. He can flip the field. He can be one of these tight ends that can do that and take away the interior and clear space underneath, as well as up the seams and outward towards the boundary or the sideline for receivers. He can do a lot of different things because he can get vertical. He's a very willing blocker. We're going to talk about that, and that's also some things that do need to be seen. That there are better blockers yet, I think, in this draft, and we're going to actually talk about them down the road. But he's very willing and capable of becoming a very good one. So that he has for him, and has shown maybe a little bit more willingness naturally, just based on being more in line than Sadiq and Stowers a little bit in that regard. Comes from an athletic background. He's a multi-sport athlete. He's really good baseball player in high school. Could have pursued baseball actually at the high Division I level had he not, decided to go to football instead. True playmaker, played quarterback in high school. So, this is another guy that's got some, that kind of capability and athletic ability. He's got complete alignment versatility, and he's got a little bit more of that because he's better at putting his hand in the ground than Stowers and Sadiq. He just is. He's good deep ball player. Julian Sand hit him a lot. He was, a feature of the Purdue offense. Some of his greatest, target rates came as a Boilermaker. And he's a good physical football player. Max Clare really checks maybe in some ways, more boxes as a classical tight end than Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers. He just doesn't do some of the things that they do better, but there are things to like about Max Clare better as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you are looking for a true inline tight end that can bring it all to the table right now, this may be the most ready of the three we just talked about. Now, what separates, in my view, and I'm sure a lot of people's views, is that ceiling for being a prolific pass catcher. Sadiq and Stowers are another level ahead, but Max Clare has those abilities and capabilities. But we saw a lot of that at Ohio State. He's a very good player, but Coach has got some stuff to work on, right?
Yeah, and some red flags as well. Really what you see in Max Clare, Drew, are a lot of things you would see in Sam Laporta. However, Laporta, I think, was a little higher in the blocking category and a little bit more of a volume. Laporta was an 80-plus, target rate guy. Yeah. So he had just even a little bit more juice to his game. But Max Clare is in and around that kind of a capable player, but he has lost significant time due to injury. And it's an ankle injury, foot ankle injury that, really cost him his 2023 season, and is something that you have to be concerned about down the road. Is it something that's going to come back on him a little bit? The recurrence of injury in the lower body is very high. In the NFL, it's very high, so that is certainly a concern. He's lean at this point in time. He's definitely got to add to that frame, but at 6'5", that's something that there's a nice frame to work with there. Yeah. For your nutritionist and your strength and conditioning. Getting him to the 250, 255 range. You're really talking about him reaching his full potential once he can do that. But that strength and mass is very much needed for him. He's got to have to bulk up a little bit. Very willing, but he's not the most technical or consistent blocker. But again, that's something that gets coached and refined in the NFL. So he's got to refine himself as a blocker. He has less refining to do in that area than what Sadiq and Stowers possess. And I know we've hit that point home significantly here, but his willingness there is going to help him reach some potential there faster as well. But it is something that he needs to work on. Yeah. Wasn't quite as dynamic at OSU as he was at Purdue and at West Lafayette, Indiana, which, that's not necessarily just a ding to him and a zap towards him. I mean, it is Ohio State. You have, some pretty impressive athletes there, including the top receiving prospect in this year's draft, and for sure, maybe the top prospect overall in the 2027 draft in Jeremiah Smith. He did have to contend with those guys too. So he maintained a good catch volume at Ohio State, but it didn't translate quite like it did at Purdue. He's a good athlete, but is he a great athlete? He's not to the tune of Stowers and Sadiq in that area. But again, to ding him that way, I guess, he's dropped some balls, he was better with Ohio State, but the higher volume he had in his targets, he had some drops to his credit at Purdue. But there's an evolution to that. Is he a tight end one? And if he is, we're talking about a guy that has definite day two value, high day two value. We're talking about another second round pick here. Is he a tight end two? Do you draft your tight end two in the second round? That's awful high when you're talking about needing to have, 25, 30, 35 guys that are rotational pieces to your football team, with another 18 to 20 that are developmental depth pieces as well. Tight end twos are somewhat in that depth category. I'm not so sure you do that, but those are the question marks that Max Clare must answer. And the better blocker he becomes, the more likely he's a tight end one.
Yeah. Spot on, Coach. I think round 3 makes sense. Because there is that potential that he absolutely could be that tight end one. The injury, got to hear more about it. It is good to know that he did bounce back, and obviously was outstanding at Purdue in 24 and then in 25 last year with the Buckeyes. So I'm encouraged by that. Yeah, I mean, from a Lions perspective, obviously we've talked about that already. I'm not going to.
He's another one that you would looked at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he could have contended for Brock Wright's position.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess if you wanted to do that with the potential of a guy in thinking down the road, as someone that could prove out and answer a question for you down the road, that would be. But again, I mean, do we in these first 2 days, do we have the luxury to draft a tight end? I don't think we do.
Not with the current capital, because they still. I mean, the Lions have a lot of day 3 capital. They have, day 1, obviously at the 17. They've got the number 50 in round 2, but they don't have anything in round 3. Now, if they move back up into there, is it going to be to get a tight end 2? Probably not, like you said. So, yeah, I would agree. The capital is just not there, and the needs. Folks. It's funny. I look even on these draft models, Coach, and you still don't see safety as a need, and that I'm just like.
It is, though.
It absolutely is, and unfortunately, it's
too very early in this draft too.
Exactly. So that's the situation. That's where it's like, we weren't surprised when Taylor Decker. We thought he was going to retire, and then he didn't. But then they ended up releasing him. So at the end of the day, we're still not surprised. We need a tackle. Yeah, we know the Lions need an edge. We knew Anzalone was going to go. We didn't anticipate Joseph and Branch both getting hurt. We didn't anticipate Rakestraw being down, and now with Terry and Arnold not really being able to stay healthy, and then there's some other issues going on. Now all of a sudden there's needs at cornerback again. So that's what's hurting the Lions, and that's why Max Clare, I don't see him being a Lion, but I think he's going to be a really good football player. So I'm curious to see where he does end up realistically on day 2. Talking about our number 4 prospect, Coach, we have Michael Trigg out of Baylor, the redshirt senior, 6'4", 240-pounder. He was a 4-star recruit out of Tampa. He also was in the Under Armour All-American game. He transferred first from USC to Ole Miss and then to Baylor. So like you said, redshirt senior typically means 6-year. But he was a 2-time All-Big 12 player at Baylor. He was an All-American last year. He also had 80 catches for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns in his last 2 seasons. For his career, 108 catches for over 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns in 38 games. Michael Trigg has progressively and steadily built up a really nice resume, Coach. He's a pretty good football player, and I'm curious to see how he translates to the NFL, but I like him a lot.
Imposing athlete, very imposing athlete, and he's very physical. Plays the game physically. Likes the volume. Likes to get targets. Likes to have the ball thrown his way. So Michael Trigg's the type of player and has a kind of moxie that typically can usually have effect on a football field in the NFL. And he does so a lot with high-end athleticism. He creates a lot of matchup issues for linebackers with his speed and his ability to separate, and then his physicality on a defensive back. You can see right there, with him in the stiff arm, he's getting a little bit of separation here in the open to get open in the open field here against Oklahoma State. He's able to do that quite a bit for the Baylor Bears. He's a red zone target and kind of established himself to do so at Baylor. He really settled in at Baylor and had his best production there. They threw the ball to him a lot. They threw the football to him a lot. And in doing so, he showed that he's got a pretty impressive catch radius. It's very much in that vein and in discussion with the Sadiqs and the Stowers. His ability to catch the football in a wider area is quite impressive. And he was a yak threat. He caught the ball and he got away. He did not want to go down. He was an end zone bloodhound. He sniffed that goal line and he would continue to kind of rumble and tumble until he could. That's Michael Trigg. Great route runner. He's played a lot of football. He's had a lot of football coaching. He's played under Lincoln Riley and done some things at USC And this is a guy that's played a lot of football, Drew, and he plays it very physically, and he's got a very hard competitive edge. He likes to be out there. He doesn't back down from anything, and he'll compete against anybody. He'll compete against anybody because he thinks he can, and that's why he is going to have some value, and that's why he's going to have substantive time, probably as a rookie on the football field in the NFL regular season.
Yeah, he's interesting to me because like the mentality he possesses, the physical skills he possesses as a receiving tight end, he screams day 2, likely round 3 candidate, but he does have things to work on, and they are concerns. Coach, what do you see him?
Well, just in the makeup of his game, and this is kind of some of the coach speak a little bit, just kind of having been around the block with different personalities of football players, and this game requires a mental toughness that I don't. There's other sports that preach it as well, but a selflessness and the ability to persevere and hold your value and your self-esteem through not getting much credit is something that you need in football. And because it also offers a lot of individual glory too, and it can. Michael Trigg, to me, just feels like a guy that's really all about that, and he likes to get involved and likes to be seen and making the big plays and those kinds of things. But when he's not, what type of player is Michael Trigg? That he has to answer. Because some of these things are not uncommon to other prospects as well. He's not near the blocker, but he doesn't like that part of the game as much as he likes catching the football, which is a conversation we are typically having at the very low levels of high school and in youth, not at the high level college going into the NFL.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong there, but there's a feel to that. Just looking at body language, just looking at the fact that he's transferred 2 times. He's not thought through a couple of other scenarios. He left Ole Miss, he left USC. He settled in with Baylor and it was great. But what are we talking about here? What's that all about? He can struggle against the press. A really good football player like. And then I know Alex Anzalone, the new Tampa Bay Buccaneer tight end or linebacker, was exceptional on the perimeter for the Lions. I know one of the reasons why he left, outside of the 99% of it, which was for money, was the fact that he could maybe diversify his play sets a little bit and play in the box a little bit more than he was in the slot. But good linebackers like Alex Anzalone in the slot gave guys like Michael Trigg a lot of problems. Gave him a lot of problems. They had a tough time getting releases, and he was always right there. He had a 59.3% career catch target rate. For a guy that likes the football, for a guy that wants it, we're not talking about the most prolific.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the most prolific. So what does that mean? Does that mean drops? It can. It can also mean just misfires on plays. It can mean he doesn't run the best route. It means they threw him the football and he caught it about 59% of the time. Yeah. And that's getting to be lower and not something that's very prolific or special. So there are some question marks here, Drew. There are some question marks. He can go from a big giant play where he flips the field and gets a 45, 50-yard gain to you don't see him for the rest of the game. And, so that some of the effort and consistency as a blocker, and I don't like to talk about that because it's not like I coached Michael Trigg or I've been around Michael Trigg. I'm just a guy that's observing football film as I've seen it on the internet. And, but I noticed those things, or I felt like I noticed them. So he's got to do those things to be a big-time tight end one in the NFL. He has certainly the ceiling to be a Pro Bowl caliber tight end because he has that athletic ability and he possesses that kind of ability. Yeah. But he's going to have to possess that from the inside too and work on some things and grow as a football player to really reach that full potential, maybe a little bit more than a lot of the prospects we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I think Michael Triggs, a curious case for me. And I agree with you. We can't speak to effort because we're not in the room. We don't. But he's going to have to convince general managers and head coaches and scouts in their interviews that this is not the situation. It's not about my unwillingness. It's not about my effort. It's about take a look at the tape. I'll show you. And he's going to have to convince. Now the skill set is day two. If there is an issue there in terms of coachability or effort, it's day three more than likely. So that's a huge difference for any player. So Michael Triggs going to have to show out not only physically, he's got his tape, we see that, and there's a lot to like there, but there also are concerns. He's going to have to address those with the teams that he's talking to and are talking to him so that he can put his best foot forward in essence. So let's see what he can do. But who do we got at number?
He is, well, if you allow me.
Yeah, no.
He has day one physical talent. His physical skills are day one. It's just that the other parts have not been put together like the guys that are ahead of them, and that's where he's got to catch because he's got a lot of ceiling. He's got a lot of ceiling that way.
He does. No question about it.
I'll take the next one, Drew, and we'll get into our fifth prospect on the tight end big board is Jake Endries out of Texas. This is another transfer player. This is another guy that's transferred, 6'4", 236, so another kind of receiver-built tight end. Comes from Danville, California, and he stayed in the Golden State for a good chunk of his career and played for the Golden Bears of the University of California. He walked on at Cal and was a freshman All-American. So he did not receive a scholarship and was in that very same year a Division I freshman All-American. So very, very impressive. He was an All-ACC player at Cal. Still strange to say All-ACC in Cal, but nonetheless, Jack Endries was. 91 receptions, 1,000 plus yards, and 4 TDs while he was in Berkeley. He was one of the favorite targets of their quarterback, someone by the name of Fernando Mendoza. So he clicked with Fernando when they played together at Cal. He was a volume pass catcher for the Golden Bears. Played in all 39 games that he was able to dress in for both the Golden Bears and Longhorns. So he's very durable that way. And he had a 76.5% career catch target rate. So this is a high volume tight end, Drew, and a guy that can catch the football, and a guy that can possess the football, and someone that did that at 2 FBS level programs, one of which is one that competes for the college football playoff year in, year out, and that's the University of Texas.
The fact that we're talking about a player that walked on to a D1 school, and now we're talking about him as our number 5 draft prospect in 2026, that to me speaks volumes about his effort, his consistency, his determination to be better, and it's showing. Jack Endries is a very fine football player. There is a lot to like. I'm going to jump into that right now, Coach. He's a very good athlete. We ran a 4.6 240 and has a 36-inch vertical jump. So lot to like about Jack Endries in the athleticism department. He's got a great catch radius and really is a vacuum on a catchable ball. He's an outstanding player, as you touched on his catch catch to target percentage. Very good football player. He's a lineman versatile. He can put his hand in the dirt. He can line up outside as well. He's a yards collector in the open field, so he's a yak guy too. Another advanced route runner too. He's demonstrated outstanding durability. Very, very important, obviously. Being a junior coming out, only having a three-year resume in college, he played a lot of football. Very bright and adaptive. He's got a good football mind. So to be that determined, and you know this better than I do, Coach, to be that determined to be able to walk onto a program and then when you transfer, you catch on to scheme systems and you're able to make it happen. You've got a hell of a football IQ.
Yeah, it's funny how in this day and age with all the data, all the non-football season training regimens and exposure and showcases and the recruiting agencies and the recruiting, analysis, that you still have guys that do not get scholarship offers that are clearly among the best positional players in their class. It's wild how it just passed Jack Endries up. Now, it may not be that he wasn't offered Division I scholarships or college football scholarships, and he chose to stay at the University of California for whatever reason, and that the University of California just didn't offer him a scholarship initially. I didn't research that part of Jack Endries that in depth. I looked at more of what he brought to the table as a football player. And I mean, Drew, I mean, he does. He has all of those kinds of things that you want as a pass catching tight end threat in the modern game. He really has those things to the tone of everybody else. It's wild.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I'm going to talk about some things we've noticed and we've read about that he needs to work on. And the first thing is his mass and frame. They're a little bit light. We've had this discussion pretty much throughout this whole program here. These guys got to bulk up a little bit. I can see him getting up to 250 pretty easily, though, Coach. Jack Endries, I think his frame can handle that. He didn't have the impact that Texas says he did at Cal. Now, part of that, you've got Fernando Mendoza throwing you at Cal, right? And I know Texas is a fine program. Young Manning's there. He's getting it done. He's getting better, but he's not at Mendoza's level. So I don't know if maybe that was part of it or not. But then in a more diversified attack from Texas versus Cal, hard to say. But no, there's no question that he didn't have the impact at Texas that he did at Cal. But still, pretty damn good football player, good functional athlete, but does not possess elite athleticism. We've been talking about that too. But a good functional athlete. He's a mediocre blocker at best right now at an NFL level at this point. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. He's physicality NFL. It's going to be a challenge at times. There's no question until he can bulk up and get acclimated to it and get that improve his strength at the point of attack. That's going to help him a lot. He's going to need some time to develop physically and as a blocker as a result of that. So Jack Endries likely doesn't start for you day one, but certainly will have meaningful reps, Coach. And I see a lot of potential in Jack Endries. How about you?
I looked for all the clips that I could on YouTube of him playing against Texas Tech, and in this game, Texas A&M, because those guys have great box football players that he would have to try to block, and that's what I was looking for. And I saw a willingness, but I did not see a very successful blocker. Physically, he's more of a finesse player than he is a physical football player. And that's okay. He plays in a position that requires both. And if you're better at one than the other, you can survive. But he needs to bring more elements to the game physically. Or he is going to be a situational tight end. That's what he will be. He will be an extra tight end, or the tight end that you want to use to split out and those kinds of things. Because he's proven that in the receiving part of his game, he's really borderline exceptional. He's just so tried and true. However, you need to be able to bring to your team in scheme versatility that you can add to the run game. You can't be, or else they'll know when you're going to throw the football. It's when you're on the field, and that's the part of to Jack Endries' game that he's got to evolve yet. So where does he fit in? I mean, he's obviously among a group of tight ends that he's going to get drafted in the middle of this draft somewhere. It's as high as day two. He's not a day one. I think we only really have one, potentially a couple of others if they're really, really valued by certain teams that need a tight end that we spoke of. I don't know if Jack Endries is one of those. Could he go on day two? He certainly could because of the potential he brings as a pass catcher.
Yeah. I see. I'm seeing round 3 or 4, Coach. So yeah, late day 2, early day 3. But yeah, the talent's there, and the ceiling's good. The ceiling's high. I mean, he's got a ceiling to be a very solid starter and with Pro Bowl level talent potentially, as far as the ceiling goes. So yeah, I'm with you, man. He's a nice player. Again, it's one of those drafts where in this, and typically with me, I've never been a huge fan of specifically the Lions when they would draft tight ends and like Hawkinson in the first round. Although I did warm up to that. We've seen it happen, and I do like this class though, and I wish the Lions had fewer needs this year, and to be able to go get a guy like a Jack Endries or a Max Clare like we've talked about like on day two. I don't see that happening. But again, nice football player, no question. I know I got my dark horse candidates up here, and first one is Nate Borkature out of Texas A&M. He's 6'6", 245 pounds. Coach, he's a redshirt senior. He's from Aurora, Nebraska. He was an all-state football and basketball player there in high school, and he's a graduate transfer from Nebraska. So he stayed at home, and then eventually ended up at A&M in his final season. He played in 39 games with the Huskers and started 17 of them. He's a four-time academic All-Big Ten player. He had 19 catches and 219 yards and one touchdown at Nebraska, 19 catches, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns at A&M. So you can see he was not really involved in the passing game per se at Nebraska, but he broke out a little bit at A&M. Not really break out, but he got more involved in that, certainly. He started in all 13 games for the Aggies, and his career catch rate, even though more limited, is 83.3%. So when he does get the ball thrown his way, he does catch it typically.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, what do we like about him? Well, he's another walk-on starter, so very similar to what we just talked about there with Endries. And likely the best blocker at tight end in this draft, and that's why I've got him on this list, Coach. The man can block. He's alignment versatile. He can line up in a 2-point stance or a 3-point stance. He's got a big, long NFL frame, and he's got a high-volume catch rate, so he's a safe target, and he's a good blocker. Now, what he's need to work on? Well, he's not very dynamic as a receiver, and he hasn't had as many opportunities to do it, but part of that is because he's got to get better with it. So that's certainly something he needs to work on. His athleticism may limit him to that tight end 2, tight end 3 role at first, and I think that's very clear. I think that will absolutely happen. And he is turning 25 before the start of his rookie season. So, again, that rookie contract's pretty safe. If you're looking longer term than that, you're dealing with an older prospect, obviously. So that's something to take into consideration, and GMs will. And he's a bit stiffer and less athletic than some tight end prospects. So, again, when you're a block first, catch second tight end, you're going to see that a lot. But Coach, I like him as a blocker. And when I look at from a Lions lens, I see Brock Wright with potential to being a even better pass catcher, but certainly that level of blocker that you can count on.
Now, I think this is the first prospect, Drew, that we've talked about today that the Lions realistically could be looking at in the 2026 draft. I think this is the type of player you bring in. He's an exceptional blocker. He does this better than anyone that we've talked about so far. He's an excellent blocker. When the ball's thrown to him, he makes the play. Who does that sound like? It sounds exactly like who you spoke of, Brock Wright. Yeah. It sounds exactly like him. So if we were looking at a player that we wanted to groom to be the next Brock Wright on a rookie contract, especially a day 3 level rookie contract, and I'm not so sure there's other teams that are value tight ends that are looking at Nate Borkature and maybe value, we're not alone. That's how you can keep your cap numbers right. So you walk away from the Brock Wrights when you're capable of doing so and have Nate Borkature fill that role. That's something that I think we could definitely see happening. I like Nate Borkature too. I really looked at him on film, and yeah, he hung on blocks. There was a lot of run plays that ran right past him when he was locked in and engaged still on linebackers, on edge players. He can block high caliber athletes and good football players. Nate Borkature is a really, really interesting prospect, Drew, and I would not be shocked somehow if he turns in that that magenta, burgundy for some Honolulu blue, and follows in his head coach's footsteps and goes from Texas A&M Aggies as a tight end to the Detroit Lions.
Hey, good point. I didn't put that together. It's a great point, Coach. Yeah, I wouldn't be upset about this at all on day 3. Absolutely not. But to your point, his blocking ability could pop him up into late round 3 if a team does value him at that level. But I see definitely day 3, round or 4 or 5 more than likely. But nice player. And then my other dark horse candidate here, coach, is Justin Jolly from NC State. He's a 6'4", 241-pound senior. He's out of Brewster, New York. He transferred from UConn. He played in 49 games combined with the Huskies and the Wolfpack. And last year, he was all ACC with NC State. He had 74 receptions with over 800 yards and 4 touchdowns in 24 games with UConn, 92 catches, over 1,150 yards with 11 touchdowns in 25 games with NC State. For his career, 166 catches, 1,950 plus yards with 15 touchdowns in 49 games, and a 71.9% career catch to target rate. Pretty damn solid for Justin Jolly. Very good college career. What does he do well? He's a real crafty route runner that finds a way to get separation, and that's why I have him on this list. I think he's under the radar a little bit because of the guys we've talked about already in our top 5. I think Justin Jolly's got a lot of good stuff going on offensively. He's got great hands. He's an excellent ball receiver. He's got high-level ball skills. He tracks and plays the ball very well. He's physical and dangerous as a ball carrier too. He's not that he's small. He's 6'4". I mean, but he plays a little more compact, and he's a tough guy to bring down. So, and he's got some speed to him, so he can make it happen. Now, what does he need to work on? Well, he's a much better pass catcher than he is a blocker at this point. And he does have a bit of a lighter frame. Like to see him over 250 certainly, and he does struggle as an inline tight end. So he's got to improve as a blocker and continue to develop technically in order to develop into a tight end 1 in the NFL. But the offensive side of his game in terms of pass catching, coach, is definitely there. He's got to work on the blocking. But I like Justin Jolly.
Yeah, a lot of his clips that I saw, in trying to review a little bit of film on Justin Jolly, his best clips were when he did not have his hand in the ground coming from the inline. It was when he was lined up in the slot, or he was a motion player or an H-back, or even if he was a little wider. He is your new age, new school tight end, where either pass catcher first, upright players. He's got that game licked. He can bring that to the table. It's what he can do to become a blocker that will enhance his ability to stick and stay in the NFL. He's another guy that possesses the ability to be a tight end 1. I could see somebody really, really thinking they've got something here and drafting him in the 3rd round. I mean, they could. I do think he goes day 3 because we just have a log jam of these athletes that are outstanding athletes and very good tight ends as pass catchers and receivers that have a little bit work to do as blockers. And Justin Jolly is definitely in that line.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you, Coach. But love the offensive ability, and he will be able to help a team on the field in year 1. He won't start, but at the end of the day, he's got potential to get to that point. So, yeah, a lot to like about him. He's going to be in the tight end room. He's going to be in the tight end room. Oh, yeah, definitely. No question. Who do you like, Coach?
Well, one of my dark horses is Tanner Koziol out of the University of Houston. He was a Cougar 6'7", 250. So we were talking about a big physical frame here. Comes from Bloomingdale, Illinois. So he's a Midwestern kid and was a 3-sport high school athlete. Played for the big 3. He was a football, basketball, and baseball star in Illinois. Came from the MAC. He came from Ball State, where he was a Group of 5 All-American for the Cardinals. He was a 3-time All-Mid-American Conference tight end selection. In 2024 for Ball State, he had 94 receptions, 839 yards, and 8 TDs. We've been rallying up a lot of career numbers here, Drew, and we're talking about in and around that ballpark for a lot of guys' career numbers. That was Tanner's 2024 season. He for his career with Ball State, he had 163 receptions for 1,500 plus yards and 18 TDs in 36 games. He was a stud there. He transferred to the Big 12. He decided to go to Houston, where he was a 2025 All-American and All Big 12 selection for the Cougars. It worked. It translated. His 2025 season was 74 receptions, 727 yards, and 6 TDs. He was the man there. He was a high volume player. For the career, 237 receptions, over 2,200 yards, and 24 TDs. He has got a massive frame, requisite catching radius. His catching radius is as impressive as Sadiq's and as Eli Stowers. It's just as impressive. It's bigger by design. He's 6'7", and he can make those catch points. This is a guy that can really catch the football in volume, or did so at the college level. He's alignment versatile. He can be in line. He can be in the slot. He can be in the H. He can be in the Y. You can line him at X and be your wide, number one looking wide receiver at times. He's a contested pass catcher. This is a guy, and he did so in the Mid-American Conference, a lot of it. This is understood, but this is the Mid-American Conference that does produce Pro Bowl defensive backs and things like this as well, too. So, I mean, we're not talking about, him playing against chopped liver. He was a phenomenal contested pass catcher. Very physical and very durable. Does not have a long injury history. He's a better combo blocker. Now he's good he can be in line. He can get his hand down there and do some things, but he is not the best climber. He does not do real well in space and does not block downfield the best. He has a tough time staying on those blocks. Those are things that he is going to have to work on to reach his ceiling. He's not the most explosive prospect. He's not the greatest vertical threat. That's why we're talking about him a little further down the pike than we are with some of these other guys that can get into the vertical game and get up the field. Max Clare gets up the field a little bit better than Tanner Cosiola does. He's got to refine as a route runner because that's going to be his calling card. That is going to be the thing that he really brings to the table is this great catch radius and the ability to pluck that football. But he's going to have to really refine those routes so he can maximize that. Got to prove to be a capable blocker, Drew. But I think this is a guy that very, very much has the capability of being a tight end one in the NFL and a high caliber tight end one in the NFL, and down the road a Pro Bowl caliber tight end one in the NFL. I love the idea of somehow acquiring this guy on day 3. I don't think he will be on day 3. I think he's going to leapfrog some guys and get drafted into day 2 just because of this frame, and people see his volume and capability as a pass catcher and the room to grow there. Because this guy is definitely a reason why the draft occurs. This is a guy that is not going to be number 1 on people's boards, yet is going to be drafted somewhere in a very economical, valuable area, and it's going to produce you a lot of football playing time as a tight end, Drew.
Yeah, red zone. Love his contested work with contested passes and his height, his catch radius. If he can establish that net niche role in the NFL as well, I mean, look out. I agree with he absolutely could climb the board over a few of these guys because of that ceiling, no question. But yeah, he's got stuff to work on. But man, you like that Clay's there, right? You can get a good coaching staff around, get a good scheme fit for him, and he could really excel, no question. Coach, who do you got at number 2 here?
Yeah, I have another dark horse as well, and that's Joe Royer from Cincy. He's a Cincy Bearcat, 6'5", 250-pound redshirt senior, wearing the number 11 for the Cincinnati Bearcats, just like their fine former quarterback and legend Brendan Kay out of Marine City High School did back in the early the 20-teens. He's a 4-star guy right from Cincy. He's a local. Started his career up the road in Columbus and was an Ohio State Buckeye at the beginning of his career for about 3 seasons. He was 2-time All Big 12 player for the Bearcats. Played in 14 games in 3 years for OSU, so it took some time. He's done some incubating. He's done some developing. Didn't play a ton for Ohio State. Came back home after mom passed away. So he's got an angel on his shoulder here, and it guided him through what was a very fruitful experience for his hometown Cincy Bearcats. In 2024, he had 50 receptions, 521 yards, and 3 TDs. In total, for Cincy, he's got 79 receptions, 937 yards, and 7 touchdowns. In his career, in total, he had 83 receptions, 961 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 39 games for Cincy. So altogether, this is a guy that really has yielded and done some good work through his experiences in total there, with a 72.7% catch target rate. So this is not the guy that was, always the first option, but another player that made a lot of plays when called upon and showed a lot of ability to do some things. As a route runner and as a field stretcher, Joe Royer possesses those things. And he does so at a 6'5", 250-pound frame. So he brings some size to the table. And that's what's going to get him his calling card and get him his opportunity, is he can stretch the field and run really, really precise pro-level routes at a 6'5", 250-pound clip already. He can find those open spots too. He gets it. He's played in a high-caliber offense for many years at Ohio State before he came to Cincy, which was also a high-caliber offense. He knows how to get open. And he's got very competitive functional athleticism. He's really proven so out there, because he showcases great ball skills and ability to make plays on the football. He's got all that alignment versatility and being able to move across the formation that a lot of these guys possess, all those modern things. Now, again, not the most polished blocker. It's not that he's not physical. But he's got some room to grow there, just like most of the prospects we've talked about, Drew. Mm-hmm. Just like the prospects we've talked about. He's gotten some penalties. He's gotten some penalties in his day. He had to play against the high-end guys, and he got his number called a few times. In the A&Ms and some of these games against the high caliber, the Texas Techs, the high caliber defenses and that kind of thing. He can get a little plucky as a blocker, and he's going to have to clean that up, or he won't be on the field much if that's the case.
Yeah.
He's very reliant on his effort. Okay. Which is a great thing. You've got to bring max effort every play as a football. As an athlete, you don't ever not bring max effort in some way, shape, or form. But he's so reliant on it that maybe at times, it cost him, especially, as a blocker, maybe in a missed route even. I'm not quite sure what I saw at times. But Joe Royer, is someone that is going to have to continue to refine technique, just like any tight end prospect does. But he's got to become a blocker. He's got to become a blocker, because he could be one of these sneaky guys that winds up in his career a starter. He really could. Because he's a guy, again, I'm trying to think a little differently here, Drew. I'm trying to think in the vein of a big picture GM, team president type guy, player personnel type guy, that you need players like Joe Royer in the NFL, because you need pay structure to balance. And guys like Joe Royer can bring you value and provide you a caliber of an NFL football player at a very, very low cost, because he's a day 3 pick in the 5th or 6th round. Joe Royer is that guy, in my estimation, Drew, that gets drafted in that area of the draft and makes a 53-man roster and has played in 35, 40-plus games, maybe 50-plus games at the end of his rookie deal. I really see Joe Royer as that type of prospect.
Yeah, he's got a ceiling. He's got a nice. And I think his floor is that he's a solid number 2, number 3 tight end who's going to give you special teams contribution. It's going to be someone you can put in there in a pinch and make plays, and certainly help you in the run game. He'll get better with that, I believe. But his ceiling is, he could develop into a number 1, and to get that value in the 5th or 6th round, or maybe in the 4th round, is pretty damn good. So, a team looking at a Joel Royer that needs to build their depth up, and to have that ceiling too. Yeah, nice pick there. Absolutely. Coach, that's going to wrap up the prospects for the tight ends today. Any last thoughts before we close this one?
No, it's an interesting position. It's one that's going to be kind of go through waves a little bit. Each round is going to yield some tight ends. Obviously, I think for the greater part are the Lions active at tight end. I think the answer is yes. I just don't know where that will be and where it continues to be a priority. If it is a priority, is there a certain player that they would love to have on this team? And if there was at a certain draft slot they would take? I'm sure there potentially could be. Could this be a position group that we don't address at all? I guess there's some potential for that too. I wouldn't expect that. I'm not so sure we spoke of a player that the Lions could wind up drafting or selecting. We may have, but I think the likelihood it happens on day 3 and certainly through the undrafted free agency area.
Yeah, no, just, and again, because of the sheer amount of needs they do need to address still. They've done a nice job of addressing a lot of depth in free agency, and they've gotten a couple starters too, no question, but the depth's been addressed. So you can see the gears maybe turning that this draft is focused on starters. They kind of got that already at tight end. So, that's where it really shakes out. But no, great job, Coach, as always. And folks, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We will have this in our playlist for 2026 NFL Draft Prospects. Everything we cover will be all in there, so you can check it out leading up to the draft in April. So for Coach Shield, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can also follow us on X as well as Facebook so you don't miss an episode. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.